Salutations. Entering into the holiday season, yet again we find ourselves reeling in the wake of two mass shootings, one at Club Q in Colorado Springs and the other one at Walmart in Chesapeake, Virginia. Once again, lives are upended, families are destroyed, and once again the left is going into their mantra about imposing stricter gun laws, and the right is going into their mantra illustrating how there is a mental health crisis, with both of our establishment political factions being, once again, half correct but not wholly correct. No amount of strict regulation relative to firearms is going to reduce the uptick of wanton acts of violence currently plaguing our society. I have witnessed this firsthand on my birthday, which is July 4th, having spent the evening watching the fireworks to be interrupted by a stampede of thousands of frightened and startled spectators who were fleeing for their lives when someone fired a few shots into the crowd. Unfortunately, also, no amount of preventative measures relative to mindfulness, yoga, and mental health therapies are going to mitigate the crisis of mass mental psychosis that is latent within our citizenry. The damage has been done. The picture that both conservative and liberal network news presents is a false one. Post-2020, lives have been upended. 250,000 small businesses were destroyed. 50 million people were thrown out of work, evicted from their homes. $5 trillion of wealth, both publicly and privately, was redistributed from the 99% to the 1% between the years of 2020 and 2021. Inflation continues to tick upwards in spite of the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. The Fed keeps printing out money to keep the system operational. Workers all across the United States are working longer, harder, and for less money. The standard of living in almost 2023 compared to 2013 is dramatically lower for a great mass of our citizenry. The year worth of virtual isolation, lack of human contact, lack of relationship building for the regular folks, while the ultra-wealthy socially distance themselves by flying their privately owned rockets into space or by going to tropical retreats, has now come to manifest in the form of a complete unraveling of the social order, and we are heading for a major crisis on par with the American Civil War by the end of the decade. Nothing short of major structural, social, and economic reconstruction is going to resolve our present crisis that we find ourselves in. And by and such, it will come to a point where radical central government action in the style of Lincoln will be required. Big finance, big pharma, big tech, they will all have to be broken up. And this requires the unpleasant prospect of martial law and military force being used to enforce such measures. The writ of habeas corpus will have to be temporarily suspended as a means to restore the equilibrium between the federal, state, and private capital. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Mark Zuckerberg, as individuals, should not be allowed to have more power than the United States federal government. In addition to such, the Federal Reserve should no longer be under the control of private shareholders who have no loyalty to our American state. There are no easy answers to these difficult problems that we are presented with, and we are faced with some serious and very difficult existential problems. This is the can that collectively we as a society keep kicking down the road as our society continues to grow ever the more alienated, isolated, and atomized. the house is presently burning all around us. And the best conservatives can do is blame the left for all of our social ills in the form of pushing CRT, trans issues, sexual liberalism, and totalitarian, quote-unquote, socialism in the form of vaccine mandates when, hello, Bill Gates and company aren't exactly socialist. They're what you would call the bourgeois. And the best the left can do is blame conservatives for all of our social ills, for failing to get vaccinated, for being desperate and finding themselves clinging to the Trump cult, as they term it, and for being misinformed about the perverse nature of the 1%, and for resorting to, quote-unquote, conspiracy theories, which may or may not have elements of truth to them, like a bunch of petulant, undisciplined, spoiled, rotten children. Neither side will look internally and muster up the courage to look at themselves in the mirror and ask, what am I doing wrong today, and can I do anything better tomorrow? There is a genuine lack of recognition that our citizenry, all across the political spectrum, are suffering. They are suffering en masse among liberals, conservatives, and moderates. Yet, what do the partisan talking heads continue to do? They continue throwing water onto the electrical fire in the burning house we find ourselves enveloped in. You have congressional leaders who do not belong in Congress. Sorry, I'm just being straight up. Idiots like Marjorie Taylor Greene inciting aggression and hostility against the trans community and wokeness as being the source of all of America's problems. And then you have idiots like AOC inciting aggression and hostility against people who were deliberately dumbed down. They're not dumb people, but they were deliberately dumbed down by 40 years of economic Reaganism as being the source of all of America's problems. Then, to make matters worse, you throw morons like Kanye West into the mix, who does not understand historical class contradictions between long ostracized Eastern European Jewish and the 1% Occidental Jewish who ostracized Eastern Europeans. And stupid, and let me say that again, stupid kids like Nick Fuentes, who want to turn the United States into a theocracy it was never meant to be countered by postmodernist liberals like supposed BLM founder and alleged trained Marxist Patty Cullors, equally far removed from where the median of society is, and who want to overthrow the United States of America, and both into the mix. And what happens? Both sides continue to double down with insane liberalism and insane conservatism in this toxic culture war, while we find ourselves heading towards economic Armageddon. What we are seeing is our citizenry incrementally committing self-destruction on a mass scale. The Malthusian agenda of the ultra-rich bourgeois 1% World Economic Forum elite relative to population control measures are presently being implemented. Now, not in the form of direct and industrial genocide as was witnessed during the Holocaust, no, which their ancestors bankrolled, by the way, but in the form of indirect genocide by mass psychological warfare, in the form of an artificially induced culture war fueled by far economically right neoliberal system masked with the aesthetic of far-left social liberalism, which has no value for human life, tradition, or culture whatsoever. And here we find ourselves being plagued with mass shootings from economically alienated, sexually frustrated men, who, due to their own socially engineered ignorance, take their aggression out at gay nightclubs, targeting people who have nothing to do with their social and economic alienation, and overworked night managers at Walmart, targeting people who have nothing to do with their social and economic alienation. What more, the unreported suicides, the unreported drug overdoses, the unreported assaults, the throngs and throngs of people talking to themselves desperately in the streets, or the sense of collective desperation overall from within our more economically vulnerable citizenry. The hyper-sensationalist, Calvinistic nature of the religious right, castigating and ostracizing anyone who doesn't fit within their puritanical and one-dimensional, ultra-homogenous paleo-conservative worldview, the hyper-sensationalist counter-Calvinistic nature of the secular left with their cancel culture, castigating and ostracizing anyone who questions their authority, and their one-dimensional, hyper-pluralistic, multicultural, postmodernist woke worldview. The complete lack of faith in our public and civic institutions, public servants and elected officials, and rejection of historical progress. Everything is unraveling at the seams. Yet to the normies, they believe that the situation that we presently find ourselves in is tenable. It's not. Our system is broken. And unless we collectively do the difficult and unpleasant work of confronting the neoliberal economic system head-on and its primary beneficiaries, future generations will be reduced to serfdom by way of our inaction and our distraction. Telling far-left reactionaries to tone down the postmodernism and cancel culture, and telling far-right reactionaries to tone down the ultra-traditionalism and Calvinism, this is easier said than done, because nobody wants to meet halfway. They want to keep throwing water onto the electrical fire, and they want to keep blaming the other side for doing exactly what the other side is doing. People in the center don't have a problem with religion, so long as religion doesn't influence public policy. People in the center also don't have a problem with trans folks, so long as drag culture isn't pushed onto elementary school-age children. But say this to either side and you will be simultaneously accused of being either far left or far right at the same time. I know I go through this all the time. And you wonder why society as a whole is feeling so alienated, because we're being socially engineered to feel envious, invalidated, and to turn against each other as economic conditions continue to worsen and our incremental self-destruction will continue. In closing, we are facing very difficult times coming down the pike in this turbulent decade. And by and such, even college-educated, middle-class, home-owning folks with families to support who did everything right, who aren't all that politically engaged, will find themselves under intense economic pressure as well. They will be looking for answers and alternatives. But where will they find those answers and alternatives when the far left demonizes them for being too conservative and the far right demonizes them for being too liberal? This is why it is important to organize along class lines and not social lines, and meet people where they're at instead of pushing them away. For this reason, I still uphold the 99% versus 1% mission of the original Occupy movement and maintain a socially centrist position, which is neither extremely liberal nor extremely conservative, as the 1% wants to divide our citizenry along racial, sexual, and social lines. We must not let them atomize us or divide us any further than we already are. We must rebuke the divisive partisan talking heads like Patty Cullors and Nick Fuentes, and redirect our collective animus away from partisan politics, the culture war, and place it on the economic 1% who seek our collective ruin and destruction, and who seek to reduce the future to a status of economic serfdom. Finally, we must destroy the problem at its root, which is the neoliberal economic system itself. There is no other alternative. I do not want to tell you, I don't tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to hear. There cannot be growth without friction. Learn to get beyond your comfort zone because things are about to get real very soon, even more real than they are right now. That's all. God save our American state. This is Comrade Pellis signing out.